Welcome everyone to Pommy in Oz. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. If you're new around here, hit that like button, hit that subscribe. It really goes a long way to help the channel out. And just let me know that I'm not talking to a wall, which is right in front of me at the moment. Just got a brick wall and a camera. So that would be grouse. We're here today to talk about the VFL wrap, Carlton versus North. It's a little bit later today. In the week than I wanted it to be. Honestly, life has got away with me, so many apologies. A lot of you have DM'd me for this, so I apologise that I have been so frugal with my time in other avenues other than this. So I apologise, but let's get straight into it. If you want to become a member of the channel, you can do that. Links in the description. Really helps the channel out. We've got some massive members lives coming up, so if you want to stay tuned, have a bit of a crack with me, that would be grouse. We've got the watch along tonight as well on Blue Abroad. Got a very special guest. So I hope you'll join me in that. And here we are, North Melbourne reserves versus Carlton reserves, 1974. It was a game really littered, in my opinion, with, it felt like watching Carlton in 2021. They just never got into the gear they needed to. And by which time the game was pretty much gone, in my opinion, and North ran over the top. It wasn't exactly I would say it wasn't exactly a game, a spectacle. Tyler Sellers, Finbar Malley and Sam Lawson, who was projected to be a number one pick in the mid-season draft a couple of years ago, really did run the back line kind of ragged. And the back line was probably taller than the average bear to deal with them, which is interesting. However, they stuck to the task at hand. They grinded. When you look at players that were AFL listed, obviously they had Hugh Greenwood, Riley Hardiman, Will Dawson, Taylor Good, all new guys, Begoa Nguyen, Will Phillips, Charlie Comden, who we know killed it this week, Braden George, Jackson Archer. They've got some players in there, Blake Drury and Robert Hanson Jr. and whatnot, but all in all, it was quite a disappointing performance. It felt really lethargic at times from the Blues, and it kind of disappointed me in some avenues because I was looking at certain players here and saying, you know what, you've got an avenue here to get into the seniors. Like, I think even though we're as good as we've ever been in my memory, we also have huge competition for spots. And I was really looking for, let's try and nail this down and let's prove a point. And we start with Lockie Cowan. I really enjoyed his game here. He really played that intercept marking type role. Well, I wouldn't say intercept marking type role, trying to be that zip. So the player that I would compare him to in the AFL would have been probably, the Nick Newman type role in the terms of being a little bit more responsible with counter pressing and rebounding, which you can see he did really well with the 6 rebound marks, the 20 rebound 50s, the 23 disposals, the 1 tackle, the 1 mark, 7. He really got a lot of Carlton score launches going out the back half of the ground with his ball use. And it's no surprise to me that he seems to be stapled on in the emergencies. He's it's probably a bad sign in some ways that this guy is one of the standout performers of the VFL. Because it's hard to find a spot for him because he's so awkward. And it would be interesting because when he was a junior at Tassie, you know that I'm a big Tassie boy, he really did play in that halfback role. But also there was times that he went a little bit further ahead of the ground. And I'm looking and thinking maybe there's that dock role to be had, maybe, moving forward. Add a few strings to his bow. But all in all, a very solid game from him. Brodie Kemp, I really enjoyed Brodie Kemp's game. He really, really was the Mitch McGovern down there. And it's going to be interesting because he thrives best when he plays loose as opposed to responsibility. And they gave the responsibility to the other bigs in there. Kemp had that kind of roaming role, and he did really well against the forwards he came up with. But it's got to be remembered that the forwards he came up to with aren't AFL standard, the Keys, which did show. Although Tyler Sellers did kick some snags on Youngie and stuff, they're not in the upper echelon. I'd say AFL average at best, and that's a compliment. That's a compliment because being AFL average is pretty good. But the 19 touches, the 1 goal, he swung forward. Now, this was really interesting. He swung forward, and we saw him play about 75% when he did go forward in that high half forward role. kind of being that secondary forward. And that's the Jack Martin role. And it's interesting because Carlton have kind of developed that Jack Martin role into Elijah role, which is kind of that hybrid, which is very traditional now. The three standard, like, medium-sized talls doesn't quite happen anymore in the AFL. They've got that dynamicness. So this is going to be an interesting proposition because you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Kent was very good, and I do like him ahead of the ball, to be honest, if I'm really honest with you. But all in all, a really solid performance, and that's a string to his bow. That's going to get you in the seniors. Jackson Binns, a guy we've really talked about, really impressive because his natural game is the opposite of our wingers. So when you looked at him at a draft, defensively, it wasn't great. It was more offensive. I'm really impressed with how hard he works on the defensive set. And there will be coming a question that both him and Ollie Hollands can run the same, and they can both enact the same type of pressure. So the 5 rebound 50s, the 7 marks, that was really a telltale sign for me of how hard he works. The big difference here is like the pressure on the ball. The pressure on the ball. No tackles in this game, but he was a very defensive threat. So he's kind of not the Ollie Hollands. He's kind of more the Blake Acres of what we'd see. And that is interesting because I think that answers why he isn't in the seniors. Because at the moment, that defensive pressure needs to get better. I need to see 2, 3, 4 tackles from him and higher pressure numbers. But his distribution was good. And I also love the way he makes himself available defensively, which, again, will be quite an interesting point. Will he get 7 marks in the seniors? That's a wait and see. But he's doing what he can do. And I really enjoy the development of his defensive side of the game. He works really hard defensive. 8.5, he was in the coaches' votes, Mark Pittonet. And this is probably the first time since Box Hill have I seen Mark Pittonet be Mark Pittonet that I remember. He was pretty much everywhere. The 5 marks, the 1 goal, the 19 hit-outs, the 25 disposals. It has to be said he came across players like Hamish Free and Taylor Godd, who probably aren't ready for AFL level yet. Hamish Free obviously has played in the seniors and is a bigger body, but he did really dominate. And I thought what I really enjoyed was his work around the ground, particularly in the second half. He really did work hard around the ground. The 5 marks, the 1 goal, like we said. I liked his work as well around, the clearances, 12 clearances. That's absolutely mental. He did look really solid. So if Carlton go back to that 2 rug system or in horses for courses matchup, it would have been interesting if Darcy was named this week, how that would have looked. But all in all, it was a real good, and it was no surprise he was in the coaches' votes. He was very, very good. Up next, Harrison Lemmy, 6.5. Again, another player that played a little bit of a swing role. Did play a little bit down the back, which we saw, the 6 marks, the 11 disposals, the 3 tackles, and he well-taken goal as well from Harry. I really enjoyed Lemmy's game this week, I have to say. It was solid, if not spectacular. He worked really hard. Sorry, there was no goals there. Sorry. That is a 1 clearance. The 1 clearance. But I really enjoyed his game down the back. He really worked hard. He really pushed and used his body well. When he did go forward, he was a good little conduit as well. That's a very interesting thing that they're working in behind the ball. I think that's probably to help him with the pace of the game because sometimes that goes away from him. But they were trying a lot of things in the VFL this week. But I really did enjoy Harry Lemmy's game. A 6.5, good little standout there. Lewis Young, this was tough. This 18 disposals, 5 marks, 2 rebound 50s, and 1 tackle for a 5.5. He got beaten quite liberally. Again, it's a real confidence thing with Lewis when you watch him, because when he gets beaten, his head kind of drops, but he still presents, and then he kind of gets into moments and gets into a bit of a rhythm. This is a guy that needs to find his position and really be focused on that position because he's only young still. He's still young and he's still got time on his side. Just feels like he's really devoid of confidence. When I watch the Doggies version and then the first year, I don't know what quite happened, but it is. And the big thing is the age it takes for him to dispose of the football. This got him into trouble a lot down the back. When he did have the second quarter, he really did start to have a bit of an ascendancy, but then coughed it up or put them under pressure on the transition as the transition phase had already started. So Lewis is going to be a really interesting one because he's one that I'm really watching there because he probably has a chance with the injuries and he has to do it. Rob Monaghan, I'm really enjoying this guy's little endeavour. Good tackles, A good mate of mine who coaches in the VFL said to me that he's a suspension waiting to happen, which is a little bit harsh, but you can see it in his tackles, definitely. But he's really game. He's really game. And you can start to see these foot skills that he's got. He's got some real good candy. He takes the game on. Took his goal really well. I really like Rob. And a 6 for me. Really solid. Billy Wilson, a lot's been talked about him. This guy is tenacious. And he's somewhere between Boyd and Hewitt in the terms of how he plays. He really gives it a crack. He's a really likeable cat as well. I've got to say, I'm a big fan of Billy's personality, which I think is key in a team-building exercise. Was not really fazed by the crafty smalls that North Melbourne had, which I really enjoyed. He did take the game on. He danced around a little bit. He was very solid in possession as well, looked to move the chains, and a solid 6. I'm really excited about his development. Pom Cotter, he was another player that was in the coaches' votes. And we talked about Sam Doherty earlier with Lockie Cowan. This guy here became Sam Doherty in the reserves. He was really solid, really tenacious. The 5 tackles, the 6 clearances, the 8 inside 50s, a little bit of zip, a little bit of directness. And this is really interesting here. This is what I want you all at home to watch, because Kennedy and Carroll currently occupy the spots, and Walsh is going to come in for one, which we know, and that's totally fine. It's going to be interesting what Pom Cotter does here, because he's a POD, and that could be a point of difference. And if he strings 2 or 3 games here together, suddenly that's a different point of dynamic in the midfield, but also an extra rotation down the back half of the ground. And didn't mind his work in the forward half of the ground. Some really sweet entries inside 50 from Pom Cotter. So he's one to watch. He scored a solid 8. Hudson O'Keefe, we love talking about Hudson on this channel, and the 8 touches, the 9 disposals, the 1 clearance, the 2 marks. This is where he needs to be, and I'm really excited. I want to see him ruck more. I thought he handled the ruck really well against bigger bodies. There's something there developing. He's got to work on his work around the ground, but he's really game and he's really aimable, and that makes me excited in the long term. There is something with this guy, and I'm happy to be the slow burn because I think of the setup of our rucks. We've got kind of a baby ruck coming into his prime. Pittonette's in his prime. I don't mind this, and he's a guy that I'm really excited about, and I like his versatility because he has a crack. There's only a 5 today because he didn't quite expel what I expected, but there's something there. He does work hard, and the more he rucks, I think we're going to see a little bit of a surprise from Hudson, so I'm really enjoying that. Dom, my boy Dom, this is a real tough one for me because the 7 touches, the 2 rebound 50s, the 1 mark, the 2 tackles, feels like the club doesn't know quite what to do with him, and he feels like he's caught in between a rock and a hard place. He's playing that 3rd role, do you know what I mean? And then he goes centrally, but he's struggling, and it feels like when he gets the ball, it feels like he doesn't know what to do with it in the terms of, do I take off and use my natural skill? And this is one that I really think is a confidence thing because I feel like he's got so many core keys. He's got to remember why he was given the opportunity because of his point of difference, and I want to see him use it more. It's definitely going to be one that I'm going to be watching for the rest of the year. And finally, we finish with my boy, Ashton. 14 touches, 1 goal, 2 marks, 2 inside 56.5. Presented incredibly well playing that Jack Martin role. And we have a natural successor to the throne, I think, of Jack Martin. And it's going to be really interesting because I think eventually Elijah will turn into that Connors position, which means that we will open up that 3rd tall. And Ashton, for me, has got it all. He's skill personified. Needs a couple of games, but you know what? All this talk about him not being ready for AFL was Mickey Mouse because Jack Martin doesn't do that in VFL. So these are similar numbers to what we see him. I really like what I've seen from Ashton. I'm looking forward to the long term, seeing how that looks in the seniors. That's it then. Let me know what you thought of the VFL. There'll be another one next week because they've got the break this week. But much love, everyone. Peace, love, and light. Pum out.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats. Baby's bad, oh baby's hella